Yeah. Evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's webinar. Thanks very much for enjoying us. As I said, I hope we're managing to the heat rather than enjoy it as well at the moment. So we'll probably keep this as much as we can to electronic match cards. So again, thanks to everyone for joining. We've got Simon Cruz here, who's part of our competitions team, who will be basically presenting this evening, taking us through the electronic match cards. And we've got Amy Robbins from our kind of help desk team who will be in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free just to put them in there as we go along if you kind of have any questions to ask. We're going to record this evening. This will then go onto our YouTube channel for those who can't make it, but also if you kind of want to check back and have a look at anything that we've mentioned as well. At the end of kind of Simon's presentation, we'll take it down and then we'll have a kind of a Q&A. But like I said, if there's any points in this evening that you think, oh, that's a topic that I want to, or an area that I want to look at or ask about, and you don't want to forget about it, put it in the chat. Amy will maybe be able to answer it. But if not, then we can bring it to Simon at the end as well. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Simon and to kick us off for the electronic match card webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so as Chris said, I work in the competitions team for community competitions and competitions operations manager. So I look after kind of the men's, the women's, and the age grade competitions in that sphere. And part of that is looking after the electronic match card from a competitions perspective, which is why you get to hear my dulcet tones this evening. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen and we'll go through this as a we'll go through this presentation. There is a video section to it, but I will be talking over that as well. Please don't be alarmed if you can still see my face, that I'm not looking directly at the screen. My other screen is to the side, but we'll just get into this now. So electronic match card. So this is kind of how we're going to run through it. So for those of you who kind of are more aware of, have used it before, there won't be too much more new information for this. Probably more useful for newer people who are more new to using it or about to use it for the upcoming season. But obviously, if you've got questions and stuff like that, we can pick those up as we go through. So first topic we're going to go through is what is the electronic match card. So as it says. So we introduced the electronic match card about 5 or 6 seasons ago now, and it's now mandatory in all RFU league competitions across the men's and the women's game. But it's also available for other non-RFU competitions. In theory, any fixture that's created in the game management system has its own match card created for it at the same time. It's just the settings that are behind it that are usually the difference. We're also in the process of expanding the electronic matches card reach into the age grade game. Last year, we trialed it in the girls' national cups, the under 18s, under 15s. And this year, it'll be coming in for the boys' national under 18 cup as well. So we're slowly but surely rolling that out as we go. Because we think it'd be great to be able to kind of get the pathway the whole way through eventually. But that's kind of the future goal. So now looking at kind of some of the reasons or kind of explaining what it is for those of you who have no idea. So here we've got a screenshot of the mobile version. There's a mobile and a desktop version, although both are from a web browser at the minute. There's no app or anything like that. But it's a method of inputting results that allows you to update the league tables instantly. It's all integrated with the game management system and all the useful synergy we can get from that. It allows the reporting and tracking of lineups, which then allows you to also track player and team statistics if you utilize the match events. Get into that in a little bit more detail, but match events at the minute aren't mandatory in the community game, apart from at the national level in the men's game, which is what was level 3 and 4. But yeah, national 1 and national 2. And it also allows the reporting and tracking of disciplinary instances. So within those match events, you can also do the yellow and red cards that will occur in some fixtures. So the next thing I want to kind of talk about is why do we, as in this case, the RFU, use electronic match card? So again, it's about having one system or method of score collection and input. And what that does is, amongst other things, is make it easier for us to offer support resources. So that's There you can just see a snapshot from our club support centre, which has a list of a bunch of topics on electronic match card, and we'll kind of give you the link towards that later on, or Amy might drop it in the chat there. But it does make it easier for us to offer support when everyone's working off the same system, essentially. It allows, because of the integration with the game management system, it allows for more easier and more comprehensive reporting, so that the snapshot that's come up there is actually a screenshot of what one of the reports that you can run, and it just kind of gives the details of how much a player's played, like how many they've scored if you use the match events, and what their form is. So it just means we can actually pull out more in-depth and accurate research as well, but also it's a benefit to the clubs. It means we can also track players' journeys and identify the trends. We can go back through and see how many games they've played, which clubs they've played them for, all that sort of thing, which then helps give us as the RFU a better understanding of the playing landscape, which means that we can then go into, it means it gives us a better idea of when we're trying to target things that we're kind of initiatives that we're looking at. And also the match events information I was just mentioning there before, like the scoring and substitutions and things like that, can help to create content, and which is not as easy to get a hold of in the community game as it is the professional game, because there's a lot less cameras around. But so in that then helps us with kind of putting the spotlight in the community game if we get that information from the clubs. But obviously, it's great. If it's something that's great for us, we want to make sure that it's useful for you guys as well. So we want to make sure that there's a benefit both to the clubs and the players. So initially now I'm just going to run through some of the club benefits. So yeah, as I mentioned, you have the ability to run reports based on the information that's input. So there's 2 reports you can run. There's one at a team level, and one at a player level. So if you use the match events, which as mentioned before aren't mandatory, but it's something we're trying to kind of encourage people to do, it gives you the opportunity to kind of check to see how often someone's played, how many minutes within that they've played, whether you tend to win when they play, and then how well they score and things like that. But even if you're only inputting the lineups, you'd still be able to see the amount of appearances, and obviously that's mandatory as part of your as part of the RFU leagues. And it just helps with tracking player usage as well, which is obviously useful for the clubs from a coaching perspective, amongst other things. The information, because as long as people have the requisite access to those reports and to the electronic match card, that it can be accessed by multiple people in the club simply. So to utilize the match card, to be able to fill in the match cards, you need to have a permission level of either 1, 3, or 5. And the role of match card administrator, which your honorary secretary and data officers can apply to your role, to your account on GMS. But that just means that it's not one person sitting there with it, like either on their laptop or even going more old school, like down in their notebook. It just means multiple people can get a hold of it. We've also added in the suspected concussion function, which should go fully live this season. So basically, this is just on the score tab of the electronic match card, and what it'll be if there's been a suspected concussion, because obviously at the community level there's no HIAs. All you do is mark it down. So say yes, select the player who it'll be from the list that you've put in from the lineups, and then click yes. And what will happen is they'll get sent some information on basically how to get them back on their return to play. But also gets sent to the club's rugby safe lead so that they're aware as well, which obviously means that the club then has an idea of what's going on with their players, and can help them kind of successfully manage that injury and get back onto the field. All the statistics are available on englandrugby.com, which means that you can easily point it towards people or potential sponsors or things like that. To see how you're doing. And again, depending on what information is being put in with the match events, there'll always be a baseline. So like the information that's there, that'll always be there, because obviously your scores are always input, so we always know what those are. And obviously for those of you who are more environmentally conscious, it's paperless. And as I mentioned before, that makes it more accessible and environmentally friendly. I'm just going to pause for a second. I can see there's a few things in the chat. Amy, was there anything specific that I need to go through at the minute, or are you?
I'm just catching up myself, just because I asked, because we had John, bless you, just saying that he's unable to see the screen, but looking like that's just a local issue to him. So John, as I said, maybe just keep on listening in and then watch it for obviously a visual recap later. But sorry you're having difficulty. Everyone else seems all right. And then just catching up on a few of the questions. I think I can answer most of these in the chat. So if you want to continue, Simon, and then on the next sort of pause, if there's anything, I will flag.
Perfect. Thank you. Cool. So benefits to the players as well, because obviously that's a selling point. It's very bright white. Yeah. So again, so those statistics that we kind of showed up in the corner before, these can be checked across seasons or across kind of all time, so they can see how well they did in certain years if they want to break it down, or if they want to look at it all time. As I think I mentioned this in an internal one the other day. It also lets people have their arguments in the bar after the game as to whether they scored 2 or 3 that day, and then go back and it's all there as a record, which is useful. It's an opportunity to have their name up in lights. So this example screenshot here is the top scorers from Loughborough Lightning from last year, from the Premier 15s. And that again can be done for any club. These achievements can be shared straight from England Rugby on their own social media. They've also got the chance to compare themselves against others, whether that's in the club, as that other screenshot showed, but also across the league or wider. So the screenshot that's up here in the top corner is actually the top scorers from Premier 15 competition last year. And again, if depending on who's filled in their match events within a league, that'll populate these tables. And good for a little bit of competition there. We've also started piloting. Some people last year got personalized emails based on their performance. So this is an example of one of the things they would get, where you kind of see, right, so they've played 9 games this season. They've only won 1 game, which is probably a bit worrying for the coach rather than anything else, but they've scored a couple of tries in there as well. And it's just to kind of help with engagement as well, and give people an idea of kind of what they're doing across the season. And again, that suspected concussion function that I mentioned with the club benefits clearly has benefits to the player as well. So it's getting them to get some expert advice directly into their email inbox on kind of how to deal with that potential injury, and then their kind of return to play protocol, and making sure that they're coming back in the appropriate way. So I'm just going to go into a walkthrough bit, which is just going to be videos of a match card that's done on the desktop version and then on the mobile version. But just before I dive into that, have we had anything question-wise, Amy, or should I just go into those questions? Go into the video.
Sorry, I was just trying to find the right window then. Still catching up. We just had someone come in saying, Mark says, I've got level 5 GMS access. When I click on comp management, it's stating I do not have access. Did Simon say I also need a GMS club admin rights? And I went back to confirm that you do need the role of club administrator.
Yeah, I'll be the match card administrator for that. That'll let you in.
Correct. And then the other ones I'm still going through, so won't flag them to you because I'm sure I can answer them in the chat. And then next pause will do the same thing. Should be up to date by then. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so this will be a video which I will essentially live narrate over. So we'll go from here. So this is the starting screen. So when you log in as a match card administrator into the competition management module, what you'll see is initially it'll be for the week, current week, and you'll only see fixtures for the. You'll only see the match cards for the teams in your club. Obviously, my access is slightly different, so I can see other ones as well. But we'll just kind of go from there. So you can also search by season or go back in the dates, narrow things down. As I said, you'll be able to see match cards from every team in your club. You can't be a match card administrator at the minute for just one team in your club. It's for all of them. So when you click in, you initially get into the summary screen. So this will eventually all fill up with the information that you're going to put into the other tab. So then we go into the home team, into the lineup. You've got the option of just loading up a previous matches tab lineup, but we didn't have that in this case. but as it goes, it's just a case of going in, clicking into one of the boxes, typing in one of the letters that's in the name, and that'll bring them all up. And then it's just a case of, and then you can just scroll down. Obviously, you'll be doing it for the full 15. But just to give you an example, so that's all the subs come up as well. The amount of subs boxes will be relevant to however many subs are in your competition. It'll automatically be set up on that. So you don't need to worry about that. That's done at a competition organizer level. So if we now go into the away team lineup, again, it'll be a similar thing. So the way most competitions in RFU leagues are set up is that the home team can also help fill in the away team, just in case the other team don't have anyone available. Doesn't work the other way around. So if you're the away team prior to kickoff, you'll only be able to see the away team tab. So with match events that I mentioned before, there's the scoring ones, the discipline ones, and substitution ones. These are all essentially just drop downs. So it's a case of choosing what event type it is, choosing which team it is, in this instance, filling in the minute of the substitution. And then because we've only got the 2 players there, it's automatically got the right players lined up. So I didn't change those. And then you just need to put in what is the reason for it, for the substitution, just to make sure that's right when it comes through. And then you can see that it comes up there. So then if we go to put a scoring one again, it's all just quick drop downs. So you choose what type of score it is, who scored it, and then you can put the minutes in as well. As you can see, there's little red stars under the mandatory information. So the minutes aren't actually mandatory, but the other aspects of it are. You can't go in and edit any of the match events if you need to. You can just see it in that little pencil and paper icon that was there at the bottom. So then you've got the post-match tab. We will only want people putting in a result here. If it's a walkover or postponement, please contact the results agent or your competition organizer. Make sure that you fill in the tries scored. If you don't, it will come up with a pop-up warning. Just because of obviously a lot of leagues now utilize bonus points for tries scored. And you've got the suspected concussion bit we were talking about there. So click yes, choose which player it is, click add player, and then just click the tick in there. So that'll all be linked up to their account. So when it gets submitted, the match card, they'll get an email around that. So then that's just a case of submitting the score. Wonders of technology. Hopefully I know roughly where we were. Get to that bit. So then there's 2 stages kind of submitting this finally. So there will be the submission of the score, which needs to be done by kind of 5:30 on most match days. And then you have to submit the match card as well to confirm that finally. So that'll then go on to the next step here once this loads up. So you then go into you can see there it's time stamped as well, so we can see exactly what time that came in, just in case there's any issues with that. On the confirmation tab, so again, for most, apart from the national leagues and the men, it'll always just come up as home team completed. You then click submit match card. So that's the second step, and that's it finally submitted. That's when the email gets generated that will send you the match card, a PDF copy, and you can see there that it's down as approved. And that's the end of that one. Amy, was there any questions relating to that?
Yes, I think there's just a few general questions on some of the content now that's come through, so it might not be specific to what you've just gone through. Okay. So we've got Spike. So for the concussion element, which I think you went through a few slides ago, will it work for age grade?
As in, because it should do, yes. I think their parents may get an email on that as well, because I think that's linked up. But I would have to double check that. But it should still work for age grade. But again, that suspected concussion bit is only dependent on how the competition's been set up. It's a module that can be switched on or off depending on the competition organizer.
Okay. And then we've got okay, so we've got a question from Ian on events. He says, if the event types are not mandatory, can I, for example, input our match events on the Sunday after a game? I was under the impression that this was a requirement of the fourth official and all to be completed within an hour of final whistle. From my knowledge, I think it's club dependent, but I will let Simon confirm whether or not.
Yeah, so that so from the men's in regional and below, so that's the old level 5 and below, they are completely mandatory. Level 3 and 4, so the NLR, or the organising committee for the national leagues, they will have slightly different rules, and it's always better to check in with them on their deadlines and their timelines, because most of the leagues that I look after in the community leagues, they won't have a fourth official. So that if it's for the national leagues, I would check in with the NLR as to how quickly they want those putting in. But if they want them putting in that quickly, then yeah, that'll need to be done then at that point. But that would be your competition organizer essentially, or your organising committee, their administrative instructions for that.
Thank you.
Right. And then I think, Chris, you were just going to offer Stuart the opportunity to ask his question on how to input an unregistered player, just because we were a bit uncertain, Stuart, on the context of the unregistered player. So I think Chris is going to let you speak.
Yeah, Stuart, if you want to come off mic and ask a question, Simon should be able to answer that one for you.
Yeah, what it is, obviously at counties level 3 and below, you're allowed to play one unregistered player or two unregistered players per week.
Yeah.
You get them unregistered players down on a match card.
So if they're not, so this is where it gets into the terminology basically. So if a player is affiliated to a club, because now we don't have on the system, we used to have non-registered players. Now we don't have that as a rule. We now have players who are affiliated, and then the effectively registered ones. So 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, it'll be an effectively registered player that will go into the lineup. If the player is not effectively registered, but is affiliated, they will still, as long as they've been assigned to the squad, they will be able to be added. But that's not going to be the case. That's not going to be allowed in most leagues. Obviously, the level that you're talking about, if that's the regional organising committee's variation, then that will be allowed. So
that's the RFU's regulation, not a deregulation. That's the RFU's regulation.
No, it's a regional organising committee variation to allow for unregistered players at level what used to be level 8 or 9 and below. But they are agreed by us. Like they come to our committee without getting too into details. They do get signed off by us, but they do come forth from the regional organising committees. So yeah, so if the player isn't registered on the system whatsoever, then a gap will just have to be left. And obviously, most of the time, I think you've got a week to then get that player registered if they're going to play again.
Yeah,
so to be on the system. Ideally, we'd probably want them to be at least affiliated, so that then they're on the system. Even then, they're not effectively registered to your to your club, but at least then there would be a proper record of them on the system. But again, similar to the last question, that's your kind of local competition organising, your regional organising committee will have the league secretary will have the best way, like how they've elected to deal with that. But my suggestion would be if you can get them affiliated at least, then you can at least have their details on there and they will be able to show up.
Okay.
Right, thank you. And then a couple more questions if you've got time quickly, Simon. So I think this one from Joe, can you confirm which elements of the match card are compulsory while the reporting of scores is useful to everybody? All the information, according to Joe, is a trade-off between being a chore and getting benefit. So I think the main element of that is which elements of the match card are compulsory for people to fill in.
So if you're competing in an RFU league, whether it's men's or it's women's, or if you're competing in any of the national age grade cups that we run, so the boys under 18s, the girls under 18s and under 15s, obviously the score, as you said, will be mandatory, and the lineups will be mandatory as well. The match events bit isn't, as I said, that's the trade-off, and that's why we kind of mentioned the benefits around that. But unless you're, as I said, national 1 or 2 in the men's, or in the professional game, then there's no requirement to do the match events, but the lineups and the score are obviously mandatory. The way the system is set up will be that you can't actually input the score, can't submit it until the lineups are both put in, because of the kind of logic that the electronic match card is built on. So yeah, it'll be that, and then obviously you just need to make sure that you confirm it at the end. So in theory, the quickest way to do it would literally be home team lineup goes in, away team lineup goes in, score goes in, card gets confirmed. That's the basics of what would be required. And then there's the match events. As I said, for most people, there's an extra on top of that, if so chose.
Great, thanks, Simon. I think we will go through the other questions after you've delivered some more content, so we'll touch on those shortly.
Right, so the next bit is just going to be basically the same thing, but on the mobile version. So I've done this on, as I said before, this isn't an app. So I've done this, you can run it through through your normal browser. This is just my normal laptop web browser, but it would work the exact same on your phone. Just imagine it's on a smaller screen, essentially. So this first screen that you come to, so the Invincibles is one of our dummy teams that we use for testing, and I'm a match card administrator for them. So I can see all of the teams. This is once you've logged in, this is the first initial screen that you would see. So we will just go from here. So we click into the men's first team. You'll have the option of seeing the upcoming games as a default, the future or the past ones. Because I want to complete the whole card, I videoed a past one. So you click into that. This is the summary screen, so it's much like with the other one, with the desktop version, this will eventually all fill up. You've got the same tabs going across the top as well there. So then you've got the lineup screen. Basically in this, it'll all be clicking the pluses in the top right-hand corner of the screen. With the mobile version, you do need to type in a few more of the letters to get the names to come up, just for the validation. So then it's just a case of typing in the name or part of the name and then clicking on the player and then clicking on the position. So I've done that with the two Jameses there, putting them in the front row, and then it's just a case of clicking done. And as you can see there, it then goes back into that lineup screen and you can see that they're both in there. So then if you click save, that will save it, and you can see it comes up with a timestamp there, as it does on the desktop version. So we can see when everything is done. So then if we just go into the other team, again, so yeah, get Jane in there, put Jane in, click into the prop position as well, and just see it there, and then click done again. And then it'll be a case of clicking save again. So again, obviously you guys will be putting all of the players in, but just for the sake of expediency, I'm just doing an example of one of them. Match events again, so you can either click add at the bottom or the plus sign at the top. And again, it's just a series of drop downs. This isn't magic. It's just for some reason when it videos it, it doesn't show you all the options that will come up, but it's the same as the desktop version. So again, just adding in a score one, just in case of adding the drop downs, and then clicking submit. You can see that that brings that up there. I think if we then just go to an example of a disciplinary one. So it comes up with the card type there as well. So there'll be technical yellow, technical red, foul play yellow, and foul play red. Just need to make sure that they're added in correctly if you're choosing to add those. So they're just examples of those. So again, with the score, it's the same as on the desktop version. So again, we only want clubs to be putting in the result type of an actual completed game as a result, or as an abandoned game, in which case we'll just need the score at the point of abandonment, and basically, so we can investigate further. Again, need to put in the try scored, otherwise it won't let you submit the score. And that should be it submitted. So then we go onto the confirmation tab, because again, we've got to do both. So you can see there's only the box there for the home team completed. Then you click submit match card. And then with the big tick, and you can see the timestamp there on the right hand side as well. And that's that completed. So that's essentially how that bit works. So I'm just going to go through the next couple of slides and then we'll get into the kind of bigger Q&A bit. So tips. So for that, I've got attend the webinars, which is what you guys have done here, and keep up to date on the electronic match card, just for any changes that may come in. Utilize the guides that we've already got on the Club Support Centre. We'll be looking to refresh those soon, but there hasn't been that many changes to it from last season. So there shouldn't be anything too majorly different for this year. If after you've looked through the guides that are on the Club Support Centre, if you haven't found an answer to your query, please then email send your queries to the Club Support email address, which I believe is just clubsupport@rfu.com. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong there, but he's nodding, so that's good. Yeah, so clubsupport@rfu.com if you can't find something that is in the guides, but hopefully that should be relatively they should be relatively holistic in their answers. So in summary, and I will let you ask questions at the end, I'm not going to run away as soon as I've clicked this. So in summary, why are we doing it? Because it's one system. Or why do we use it? Because it's one system that allows us to give a better support offering to clubs. We couldn't really do something like this if it was a bunch of different systems that was all being added around. It enables the clubs to have access to information that can help with player management, other coaching decisions, and also with your marketing. It also gives the players the chance to show off their achievements. As I kind of mentioned earlier on, everyone likes having their chance to have their name up in lights. And then just please utilize the guides that are on the Club Support Centre and email any queries that you might have that aren't covered in the guides. But as I said, there's a lot of good information on the Club Support Centre there to check those out. So yeah, we'll go to the Q&A section now. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because there's not anything else there.
Great. Just a quick one, just on what you said quickly there with Club Support. So Club Support are similar to GMS now. So instead of the email, I think that was mentioned on the slide, it's the submit a help request, which John kindly reminded us in the chat with. So you'll need to submit a ticket to Club Support should you have any questions on EMC. Equally, there's obviously the help portal. So the guides that I've shared on the chat, please do give those a read. From FAQs about EMC to struggling to access, so what permission level and role is required, etc. So I think there's 4 or 5 at least on EMC alone. So a really good variety of that. Now I think we'll crack on with the questions. I can go through the ones in the chat, or do people just want to raise their hands and ask those that still feel they need answering?
So Simon, I think there's 3 or 4 people that have asked probably the same question. So it'd be quite good to probably cover up on off is around completion of kind of the event scores, concussion element of the electronic match card. We all know what it's like staying on the sideline, cold, shivering, trying to maybe input something on the phone, but it might be easier to write it down and then go back in the day or so after. Is that an option at all within the?
Yeah, so the suspected concussion one, because that's on the score tab, that one probably should be done. Obviously, ideally should be done as a matter of emergency is a bit strong, but a matter of urgency just because of the nature of what it is. So that one will need to be done kind of as you're submitting the score, or whichever team is submitting the score. With the match events, yes, you can go back in and do it afterwards. That should be fine. It's probably just courteous to make sure that your opponents are aware that if that's what you're planning on doing. But again, everything is timestamped, so we can't. It's easy to see when things have been done and if they've been done afterwards, or if something else has changed. What I would say is that if so, with that PDF that you get once the card's been submitted, if you then make any changes to that afterwards, it doesn't automatically email you any changes that you've made to it. But what you can do is go into the summary tab, and if you scroll down, there's a button that says produce match report, and that will produce another PDF that's with all the information that is currently on that match card, so that you can get an updated version of it essentially afterwards if you wanted to keep the PDFs as well, but all the information would still go up onto the website.
Brilliant, thank you, Simon. I think Robert's kind of had 2 questions kind of for him. Will there still be a phone-in option? We all sometimes know it's quite hard to get Wi-Fi signal out in the back of Beyonds sometimes on the backfield. So is there going to be a phone option? And also, failing to submit match cards has resulted in fines being issued in the past. Is that still going to be the case? And kind of why is that element there as well?
Yeah, so answer the first question around the phone, yes, because we appreciate internet isn't perfect in various places, so it's useful to have that backup option. But obviously, unless told otherwise, the primary option should be to utilize the electronic match card. But yeah, if there's an issue with that for whatever reason, whether it's a match card administrator can't make it or something like that, or there's just general internet issues, then please utilize the phone. Information around that should have, if it hasn't already, been sent out by your regional organising committee as to what the appropriate number is, because it's different for each of the regions and then different again for the women's competitions. So that one, why is there fines? I think it's more there as we want to make sure we get all the information in as soon as possible. It's not a case of trying to ping people or whatever else. Like there's not some giant kitty sitting somewhere. As far as I'm aware, there's actually not that many clubs get fined, or it's not often the case. But it's more just a case of trying to make sure that we get in the good habits and of submitting things on the time it's supposed to be. I would say if you are having issues, please make sure to contact your league secretary about it. And then if something needs to be worked out, then go from there. That would be my advice in that aspect.
Perfect. And I think Dave's coming with a question around, will there be EMC help desks available at the beginning of the season as we've done in previous years?
Yeah, so the idea is to run a similar service to what we've done kind of for the first kind of 6 to 8 weeks, I think, of the season. I think it'll be with just to make sure that everything's running as it should be on a technical level and on a more user level as well. We appreciate there's probably a few new users that'll be coming in to use it, and that has its own teething difficulties at times, which is fine. If it's a new system to someone, so we should have some, at least for the start of the season, have some increased support there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all the Q and kind of questions that are coming from in the chat. So if anybody has any kind of others that they'd like to ask, kind of raise your hand or come off mic and feel free to ask some questions. Yes, Stuart.
Yeah, what access level will I require as a league secretary to be able to look at other players? Because quite often we get the question of, has players played so many first team games and he shouldn't be in the third team, but he's been playing in the third team or the second team. So what access level do you need to be able to do that?
So actually, in theory now, because of the stat center that we kind of started up last year, you don't actually need any access level to do it. You can actually do it just on the website itself. If you search for the team, if you know what team that they play for, find a fixture that they've played in, click on that player, and as long as they, whatever their other teams are utilizing match card, you'll be able to click on it and be able to break it down by the season to see exactly who they played for each week.
Okay, thanks.
Was there any other questions?
I think, Simon, one that we've spoken about and kind of we had a couple of last year was around what if a player doesn't appear on the electronic match card?
Right, yeah.
And then kind of, because that's an almost a Friday night, we're putting players in and they're not appearing. It's kind of where would they be and where might we find them?
Yeah, so one of the things that we brought in last year kind of to help with the efficiency of the system was the assigning players to squads. So basically there's an extra step in there that only needs to be done once for each player, but essentially what it is that players could be registered to the club, will either be affiliated or registered or effectively registered, depending on what competition it is and whatever else. But they then need to be assigned there. That will then put them into the all club players list. And then in the team management section in the main module of GMS, if you then go into the specific team, whether it's the first, the second, whatever it might be, you'll then go into the all club players list, find the player, and you can select multiple ones at once, and then click assign, and then it will assign them to that team that you've went into. So if for a player to show up in your electronic match card list for that particular team, that list is then being pulled from that list of the assigned players into that squad. And that's what, again, because there was a new process last year, that's what there was some issues with. So hopefully there will be less of that this year. One, because people will have more familiarity. Two, because in theory there shouldn't be as many players to add to squads. What I will say with that just as a thing is that players can be part of multiple squads at the same time. So if it's someone who is a fringe kind of first or second team player, that's fine. You can put them in both squads. If you really want to, you could put all of your players in all of your squads, but that wouldn't really help with the efficiency of the system. So probably isn't necessarily a massive benefit for you. But just to say that is an option if you wanted to do that. But that will have to be done for every player As I said, so if you get someone who signs up a bit later in the season, they will have to be assigned to the appropriate squad after they've been registered, before they can be put on an electronic match card.
Thanks, Ryan. I think, Colin, you've got a question to ask.
Yeah. Simon, the perennial question, is there any change to the 100 effectively registered player limit?
There is, actually.
No.
Which is obviously a thing. So yeah, so that limit is being removed. So that should obviously help alleviate things, particularly in Eastern Counties. And obviously now, as we've gotten more lower 15s that have come into the competition as a result of the future competition structure work, to help kind of alleviate the pressure on that, that limit has now been removed.
Do you know when it's going to be changed? I went into our club details today and it's still showing 100.
That would be a question for one of my technological colleagues. I'm not certain on that. I'm not sure when this, if it's the season switchover when they do that, if that's when that'll get updated. Amy, I don't suppose you happen to know the answer to that.
I don't know. That'll be a Chloe or Matt question. But if you want, you can pop that to the GMS, raise a ticket with us on GMS, and we can put that across and get the answer for you equally, if that's helpful at all.
Amy, I trust you that it will be changed. Thank you.
What's that? Sorry, I just missed that.
I trust you, it will be changed.
We'll see. No promises, but we'll see and get back to you.
Okay, cheers.
No worries.
Brilliant. I think Robert's got a question in the chat there, Simon. Basically saying if the home team's listed their playing squad and therefore responsible for the match card submission, which we understand, what are the issues if the away team haven't listed their team prior to kickoff? You know, can teams past kickoff, or what's the situation with that?
Yeah, so the way the match card logic is set up is such that there's basically a tick box in the background that says home team is mandatory, away team is mandatory. So we want to make sure that all the lineups are in beforehand. It's the same way as when it was paper match cards. You would have made sure that those were all kind of sorted out before kickoff as well and signed off. So again, I'm sure you're all good, honest people, but unfortunately not everyone is. So just from that regulatory aspect, we want to make sure that we get that in beforehand. Again, if there is issues as it relates to getting it on, what we said before around the home team being able to put them in for the away team if their match card administrator isn't available or is having an issue or whatever. So that can be done on the sideline by the home team. Again, contact with the league secretary if it's something that isn't solvable in that regard. Will be key on that. Again, everything will be time stamped, so you'll be able to see what we're doing with that.
Brilliant. I think if there's any more questions, please feel free to ask. If not, we can.
No, I think if there isn't any other question that are going to pop up, then I think, yeah, just as a kind of sign off from me, I would just say the main thing is making sure the kind of common things that people get tripped up on is not making sure you've got your card administrators assigned before we start, making sure everyone is registered if they're supposed to be registered, but if not, then at least assigned into the squads appropriately, because then you can fill your lineups in. You shouldn't have any issues with that. Obviously making sure your score is in correctly, and that your score is inputted correctly, not incorrectly. Your score is inputted correctly, and that the bonus number of tries scored in there are correct and match up to what the score line actually is. And then submitting that, and then making sure that you get that confirmation bit in the last step, because that's what finally sends it all off. It won't generate the PDF or the email if it's not submitted. If the card itself isn't actually submitted. So that's that confirmation tab that comes in after the score one. So we need to make sure that that's completed as well, because that's the final step essentially. But otherwise, I think we've covered most of it. Obviously, we've got another webinar coming up closer to the season in August. I can't recall the exact date for that, but I'm guessing Chris can tell me that, and we'll go from there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. I will tell you the date in just a moment. I think it's around about the 18th of August. So it's around about a month's time, 19th of August. So a couple of things. Obviously, thank you to Simon for presenting that. I think it's a really nice kind of refresher for a lot of people, and hopefully somebody's taken away something new or something that they can add to their teams. I think the playing stats kind of more we're hearing that players want to know how many tries they score compared to their mates and their peers is quite a thing. So if you are able to do it, fantastic. And if you're not, we understand it, but the essentials are, like Sam said, the scores and those elements of it. Thanks to Amy for being in the chat this evening and helping out with links. It's been really useful. And obviously, thank you to everyone that's joined the call on what is a very warm Tuesday. That's everything from us. The recording will be put up. We'll put it on YouTube as well in the coming days. And kind of all the links will attach to the electronic match card element on the GMS page on the website as well. So please check back there for a couple of links as well. And Colin, we will follow up on that 100 player limit, which probably should have changed by now as well. But I know we did communicate that out quite early on in the season, or in the beginning, to say that 100 player limit has been lifted for the adult game with the lower 15s entry. Once again, thanks for everyone for coming this evening. Hope you found it useful, and hopefully see you on some more of our webinars soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, Chris.